great to be here, and yeah, I look forward to talking. The piece which premiered last night is called An Ocean of Years, and it's the final part of an orchestral cycle that I spent quite a few years working on called Time and Eternity. This last piece was also dedicated to Christoph Eschenbach, who asked me for the piece several years ago. And it's at the heart of the piece, there's a very simple image, which is this image of waves. As composers, our job is really to combine sound waves, and it's also something very powerful and archetypal to think about standing at the shore of an ocean and watching the waves crashing down, and every wave is a little bit different, but at the same time we call all of them waves, and I think in my piece maybe the most obvious or the most important feature is that the materials are coming back and back in cycles, and we hear the same ideas many times, but at the same time, every time there's a different color or a different light. And I think that's, having heard it now many times this week, I feel like that's the most concise summary of what this piece is. It's been a really special week for me. Firstly, because this project should have happened 2 years ago and was, of course, interrupted by the global pandemic. And when you've waited a long time for something, it also changes the sense of build-up and significance of that moment. So when I arrived on Wednesday morning and got there just in time for the first rehearsal of my piece, it was with, I guess, quite a great expectation. And it's been really nice how across the course of 3 days there's been this very fast but also gradual growth of the understanding of the piece in the orchestra, and also my own understanding of how to shape the dynamics and some of the orchestration. I was making a few changes in the rehearsals, and the orchestra was very open, very welcoming, and it's been really a joy. You hear it and then you realize, there's a way that I could make that better, and it's very simple. So I could just ask that person if they can add this one note or play this note a little bit louder. And so this is very normal in rehearsals for me. And then there's sometimes also other things which I'm hearing, but they'll be a little bit more complicated to perfect. And so then maybe I make a note on my score that I will go away after the concerts and make some changes, but I'm not going to trouble the musicians on the day, because you don't also want to disturb the situation too much.
Auf Deutsch oder Deutsch? Auf Deutsch oder auf Englisch? Ist es manchmal schwer, mit den Musikern zu arbeiten?
Is it difficult to work with musicians sometimes?
It was very easy to work with these musicians. Sometimes it can be difficult. It depends on the people. It's like anything in life. Some people you get on very well, other people it's not so easy.
Mit uns war es sehr einfach. Okay.
I have one last thing to tell you from my life as a composer, that there's a secret for orchestra. Even though you have 100 people, you don't need 100 ideas. You just need 1 or 2 ideas, and it's about everyone working together on a small number of ideas. So it's not as scary as it looks when you see 100 people on stage. Yeah, I was asked this question so many times yesterday, not only by the children, but also by quite a few adults after the concert as well. And I think that's a really interesting question, because it seems that people are fascinated by the relationship between the short time of a piece of music, you know, it's 20 minutes long, and the very slow process of making that piece of music come into existence. But it's also a very hard question to answer because I'm not putting a timer every time I sit down to work, and also most of the work is probably happening in my subconscious or parts of my mind when I'm not sitting down, but maybe I'm thinking about it while I'm walking down the street or when I'm gonna fall asleep, or it could be any time. So I find it impossible to distinguish in a creative process the boundary between working and being alive, you know. So I didn't give anyone a satisfactory answer, and I still don't have the answer, but in concrete terms, you know, maybe it's taking me about a year to write a 20-minute orchestral piece. But then this one was interrupted, so there was 1 year, and then I didn't quite finish, and then I came back to it 2 years later and finished it. So then it took 3 years. But I did other stuff as well. Yeah, I love to write for orchestra. It's a very special and unique medium. It comes with its own historical baggage and weight, but at the same time, because of the diversity of instruments and kind of coloristic possibilities that you have in the orchestra, I think every time there's a feeling like I can discover a new possibility or a new direction within my own orchestral language. Tuning is very important, obviously. You know, people often speak of whether something is in tune or out of tune, and of course that's a very relative concept because that means you're in tune with a system which was agreed before, basically. So then the question when you're a composer is what system am I going to agree with myself and the musicians for this concept of whether things are in tune or not. Of course, agreement is very important when you have a large group of instruments, because if they are not in agreement about what a note is, then it makes a different sound from the intended sound, you know. And that's just being out of tune. But when I'm retuning, I'm not trying to make the music out of tune, I'm trying to make it in tune in a different way. Yeah, I always create problems for myself by engaging with topics that are not always easy to talk clearly about. Okay, so for example, with this orchestral cycle, time and eternity, I mean, in a way, everyone has an idea about what is time and what is eternity. But in another way, it's pretty much impossible to explain with words what is eternity, because it's not about a very long amount of time, right? And it's not really something that you can experience from being in time, because when you're in time, then you're in time, you're not in eternity. So I suppose that's, I'm going to tie myself in knots here, right? It's difficult. But I like the idea anyway, and the possibility that music has for playing with our perception of time. Deadlines are very important. Without a deadline, I will not finish a piece. So that's all I have to say. Well, I've never missed a deadline. Well, I mean, I've never not had a piece ready for the premiere. So then every organization has a different sense of when the deadline should be in relation to the premiere, because yeah, for an orchestra, then you also need several weeks or even months to prepare the material to the high standards that the orchestra need it. And so the relationship between a deadline and a creative process depends on the scale of the piece. If it's a solo piece for one person, then it depends on your relationship with that person and how happy they are to receive something at the last minute. or how happy they are to change something on the day, or So yeah, it varies. It's a good question. You have to be, it's terrible to say, but a lot of things are to do with luck, and a lot of things are to do with a kind of persistent self-belief that you're doing the right thing with your life, and that sometimes it feels like it's going really well, and other times it can feel really hard, and trying to remember that the purpose of what you're doing is anyway not about becoming successful. The purpose is about trying to write the music that you feel that you want to write, that is the reason you had this dream that you want to be a composer. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and I hope there's at least some things that make sense in what I said.